Okay, hi there. This is part of special education for Trent University. My name's Brennan Oldman, and this is Assignment 1, Module 1, Inclusive Education. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your feedback on the discussion board. I am new, just finishing pre-service education, and this course is already very enlightening, and I'm already taking away quite a bit from it, just reading through the discussions and understanding different viewpoints. So I'm looking forward to this course, and hope to hear more feedback. So, inclusion. What does inclusive education mean to me? So this image here kind of speaks bounds to itself. Learning knows no bounds. I truly believe that there is a way, and you can find a way as far as teaching goes to be able to reach all learners, no matter what it is that obstacle in front of you that you feel is an obstacle or a barrier, whether it's physical or mental. No matter the exceptionality, there is a way for that learner to learn, and they do want to learn. Whether that can be articulated to you, if there is a verbal barrier, communication barrier, some kind of impairment where you're not able to really understand that, they do want to learn. So in my opinion, they should be afforded the opportunities to participate within everyday classroom activities. Inclusion is in place for all students to learn from one another and from each other. It's not just for students with special needs to learn from other students with similar needs. So as a teacher, I hope to be able to provide these opportunities not only within a physical classroom, but in the mentality, within the attitudes, within the mindset of my students. So if I can demonstrate through teaching, if I can walk the talk, then I hope my students, that's infectious, and it goes forward with my students. Encouraging families, students, as well as coworkers to understand that there is more similarities between each other than differences, and it's something that I've taken on a great deal over the past year. Looking at the special education textbook, a really good quote stands out. Students with special needs are just that, students. Special education has become normal, integral, and a functional part of the system, and I do believe that is true. It is an ongoing effort, and currently the Ministry of Education and globally, there is a lot of efforts right now to be able to present teachers with the understanding that we need to accept the differences that we all have within the classroom. It is important for those under the autism spectrum disorder, or those living with other learning disabilities or mental disabilities. There is value in science. There is value in math, regardless of how it's being comprehended. There is other ways for it to become used and integral, and for them to find connections to it in their own regard. So we need to be able to teach all the curriculum strands, and it is important that we do so. The United Nations, UNESCO, has a lot of fronts right now and movements around the world. Currently there's nearly 2 billion children within K-12 educational institutes as of 2013. So the number is currently continuing to grow due to the accessibility of education, thanks to the internet, and infrastructure growth in areas around the world that never had places to learn, or educational facilities. So areas in South and West Asia and remote areas within Europe and Africa, they are now having the affordance of being able to have education as well. So we need to remain equitable and equal within our opportunities there, providing individuals of all shapes and sizes the opportunity to learn. And that's something that the United Nations is doing a great deal with. They have the Global Campaign for Education, which is an initiative that's focused on getting the nearly 40% of students living with physical disabilities that are not within the schools into a school culture or school environment. Right now, there has been big advances in many countries in getting nearly several million children within the schools, and creating a natural just a natural progression into the school systems for those that never had that quality of life before. So there has been a recent survey that came out, and it shows that nearly 350,000 children over the past 5 years in Eastern Africa have actually reached nearly 50% of the expected literacy and numeracy levels that we would consider standard over here. So that is a great feat. Inclusion is still thought of in some countries as an approach to serving children with just disabilities or within the general education system, but internationally it is increasingly seen as a more broad reform that supports and welcomes diversity among all learners. And that's something here in Ontario and within the Durham region that I feel is a big focus in the boards here. So the Ministry of Education, of course, introduced Bill 82, which focuses on establishing individual education plans for students. But we know that teaching exceptional students has needs for extensive adaptations to curriculum, teaching, evaluations, and assessments. The school board does have in place an equity and inclusion education policy as well as of 2010. But with that said, we do need to continue to develop teacher education courses like this, but more for service teachers, maybe even mandatory professional development relevant to PA days, or intermittent that has to be programmed into some kind of staff driven initiative. But right now, UNESCO, the United Nations Front, UNESCO, by the way, it is an educational, scientific, cultural organization. It's a branch, of the United Nations. And currently, they believe that preparing teachers for children with disabilities is fundamental right now, because it's so widespread, whether it's emotional exceptionality, behavioral, physical or mental impairment or disability. There is a lot of exceptionalities right now within K-12 education that need to be catered to in some regard. So most teachers need to develop understanding of working with children, not just with physical impairments or disabilities, but also mental as well. If they do get training, it should be based on a special education model, where the focus should be separate. Where the focus should not be in separating or in segregating those students from the classrooms. It should be focusing on an inclusive model where lesson planning, as you develop your expectations and you build opportunities for students, you need to be able to adapt and not so much modify and accommodate, but as the lesson and the whole heart approach starts, that's where you need to derive an inclusive approach right off the bat. So that kind of leads into a couple images here that were centered on being aware. And right now, the two big track systems over in the UK is in preparing and in preparation surrounding special education. They're doing it in like a 2-track system as of 2014. So they have Track 1, which prepares teachers for principles of equality and child empowerment. So it's relevant to foundational knowledge dealing with children that have maybe a minor disability, whether it's a linguistic or something to do with traumatization. If a student is maybe not child-friendly or hasn't been in an environment like that before. So identifying collaborative learning, peer support, finding solutions, establishing multi-sensory learning environments. So it's kind of like the first tiered approach to developing an inclusive understanding of a child-centered pedagogy that surrounds creative and reflective teachers, constantly reflecting in their practice. And then the other track, which is like a step 2 to their education, is qualifying teachers to be able to accommodate to different impairments. So special needs relevant to blind or visual, hearing or deaf impaired, physical impairments, speech, and general cognitive impairments as well. So I feel like that is something that Ontario needs to move forward with as well. Kind of like with this Part 1 and Part 2 education, I'm sure it gets more intensive. I know we're developing in through an IEP, which I'm really looking forward to, as I've only seen a few IEPs. I've never had the opportunity to build one, so I'm looking forward to that. These images here, being aware, to me, they really stand as just... I looked for really, really strong images. Like, these are not taken by me, but these are just really strong images with what I believe is an inclusive culture, is an inclusive environment that the students are in. In the left image here, we see that the students are within a circle together. They're having one read aloud. It looks like they're doing some kind of inquiry or a song of some sort together. And there's an individual here, a young boy or girl with it looks like they have a physical impairment in a wheelchair, and they're right in there on the corner of the carpet. They're part of the circle. They're not on the outside of the circle. You can see a student looking to the left at the interaction here with the EA, and it just looks very joyous. Not something that I always do see. And down here to the right, this young girl here looks to maybe have some form of autism, and I believe that is where I pulled the image from, is that's how it was described. And you can see here that there is some kind of literacy or art approach in the classroom, and they're together within a center or within a collaborative environment. So this is interesting here. It says, in some ways we're all so different, but in others we're the same. We all want to be treated with dignity, to be healthy and be safe. And this is a little comic that pulls from a diversity string of comics, but I felt like it was strong in that we are all deserve to be treated with dignity. We all deserve to be safe, especially within the classroom walls. So the pin's hardest hit. So this is Shelley Moore, PhD candidate and sessional instructor for the British Columbia University. And I came across her about a year ago in my pre-service and watched her TED Talk, and it was absolutely phenomenal, and I thought it was really, really good to bring it back up for the purposes of this assignment. So basically what it is she speaks to the pins that are hardest hit and uses a metaphor of bowling, in that when we bowl straight, and we want to hit straight on. But in a lot of ways, when we do that, we end up with what we call the 7-10 split, which is the hardest shot in bowling. And bowling is in a lot of ways like teaching. We bowl and we try to go right on, and we try to do the best, and we try to hit a strike. And we try our best. And in most cases, we can do that, and we hit it. But what's left standing is these two pins. And these two pins, in a lot of ways, represent those two students left behind. And in some ways, you're left at the end of the day, and you have those two students staring at you, and it's only one of you, and you can only do so much. So you cater and you modify and you accommodate and you work towards the one student. And in the end, there's that one student that never receives the support and never receives the help. And it all starts from the lane. It all starts from the bowling lane. So if your approach is more well-rounded, if it is more inclusive to begin with, if you learn to bowl with a curve, if you can curve the ball, if you can approach it from the side, the ripple effect is you will hit over more pins and you will be more successful, which is a crazy metaphor, but it's a great watch. I encourage you to follow up if you've never seen any of her work before, and she has some incredible philosophies surrounding inclusion, and she's making some big headway in reforming K-12 education that way. So I thought it was important. And I wanted to leave with some teaching strategies. So moving forward, assuming the assumptions made in life. You should never, obviously as an educator, you need to remain open-minded, but more so than that, we need to remain very cautious of the assumptions we make about learners. The idea of inclusive education is not exactly a new, revolutionary thing here in North America. It has been an ongoing effort for the better part of 20, 30 years now in providing opportunities for identified impairments or individuals with disabilities. So we are learning about more practices around the world as not to embed proper ideas, but to understand what cultures work and how we can adopt an inclusive notion for ourselves. So ways that I hope to do that is through community. So ongoing with the teachers within the school, the administrators, other students, the parents, I want to have really, really good communication for all my students, even those that I know maybe don't need it. They do need it. They might need it in some regard. So it's extremely important. So demonstrating it school-wide, involving the broader community and building on existing initiatives. So trying to get people to understand why we need to know more about our learners, know more about what's happening in other areas of the school, how things have happened in the past. I want to eliminate barriers that students make present and think difficult. So if there's anything I can do in my classroom physically within that environment, and things I know regarding sensory, visuals, auditory, anything, I want to be able to adjust to that. which kind of lies into word of mouth and teacher training. Although I'm not a professional developer, I don't go around doing teacher education. I think it's important that as educators, if you know something, if you have an inkling, if you have an idea, if you feel like you can offer help in some regard with an exceptional learner, then provide that information and try your best to help the overall school community and to help that individual be successful. Inclusive technologies is kind of where I wanted to end off. I'm a tech guy. It's something that I have a lot of passion in. It's something that I hope to pursue a great deal of as I become a permanent teacher someday, or work into a branch within educational technologies. And to be perfectly honest, the big shift to 21st century pedagogy and integration of technologies is very worrisome, especially for those learners with those exceptional learners. We need to prepare resources, and we need to be aware of interactive softwares and applications for these learners with exceptionalities. I can't stress that enough, and it's something I hope to be able to provide more information of in future modules. I realize this video is probably a little bit long, but I hope that outlines my presentation. And I also have my citations and speaking notes here as well, and I will upload those also. So thank you very much, and I look forward to next assignments. Thank you.